So when we're talking about eschatology, that refers to theology of heaven or theology of the end times. And so, the prevailing worldview in the secular world is kind of synopsized by the slogan YOLO. You only live once. And so when people are talking about YOLO, for whatever reason they always say it like that. But when people are talking about YOLO, they usually are saying, let's go have fun, let's go pursue pleasure. But it's a deeply eschatological belief because the premise is you only live once, like this life is it. And so there's actually an ancient philosophy that is kind of the older version of YOLO called Epicureanism. And that was the belief that there's no afterlife, like all we are is matter. And so what's the response? Well, the response is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. And so I would say that Epicureanism is kind of the primary worldview for secular modern people. There's not really a belief in heaven. There's not really a belief in anything after this. So what's our response? Well, we maximize pleasure and we minimize pain. And I think that mindset really has seeped over into the worldview and the perspective of modern Christians. Most people don't know a lot about heaven. When I started teaching about heaven in my own church about 8 years ago, I asked people to tell me how many years they'd been going to church and how many lessons they'd been taught on heaven. And what I found is that in my church, or the people in my church, that they had been taught one lesson on heaven every 18 years. So it's pretty hard to have an eternal mindset if you don't know anything about heaven. And if, as a believer, you really don't have a heavenward perspective, if you don't have a presence of heavenly mindedness in your life, then you're just going to go to the default mode of maximizing pleasure, minimizing pain, which is basically going to lead to a self-focused, pretty meaningless life. But what you see is when a person has an eternal mindset, it radically changes their life. It brings meaning to their life. It brings hope to their life. It brings purpose to their life. And so I think that a lot of the problems and a lot of the issues and shortcomings that we see in modern Christians are largely driven by a lack of heavenly mindedness.